SONIC Entertainment with an Edge. I'm Jaime En Fuego, cordially welcoming you to the return of my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, you can just call me Fuego for short. And yes, it's been a hot minute since I did a review because I have been trying to just plow through the Clone Wars, and it has been an arduous process, but a very exciting one nonetheless, and there's some very cool coverage coming super soon for that. But I just had to take a little quick detour and speed through. That's right, this is going to be a Rapido Fuego review of Sonic the Hedgehog. Yes, a first-time director, if I'm not mistaken, behind this one. James Marsden, starring along with our, our favorite little speedster. And, you know, I was a Sega kid growing up, you know, between the Genesis and then even more so the Saturn and the Dreamcast being the first video game system that I ever pre-ordered. You know, $99.99, baby. I was all about that, and Sonic Adventure was one of the killer apps for that, along with Soul Calibur, and I mean, oh boy, even like, Power Stone was really good. I mean, there were some very cool launch titles later on. We got Code Veronica, and it was a system that I hold a very special place in my heart. Even Blue Stinger, man, and Illbleed, and some of the other weird things that they did on there. Shenmue, I mean, which was fantastic. I was a Sega kid. I really, truly was. I had 32X. Never got a CD, unfortunately, because I really wanted to play Snatcher, that cyberpunk craziness. But, you know, I was really pretty pissed when Sega was pushed out of the video game hardware landscape, at least. Yes, they still make video games, they still are a software company, and I still remember the first time I started seeing Sonic games on Nintendo. I didn't mind as much, even though they had the big console rivalry, obviously, you know, that lasted a few different, system incarnations, and I mean, between the 8-bit and the 16-bit wars, the 8-bit wars, a lot of people did not have, that Master System, I believe it was called. Very few in the US and North America, obviously. It wasn't until the Mega Drive / Genesis really became a thing that, my household still had a Super NES and SNES, a Super Famicom, if we're going to go into that and be all, other side of the world status with it. But yeah, I had both a SNES and a Sega Genesis, but I mean, come on, man. I mean, Sega was the cool, edgier, Sega! And I don't know. For that sheer fact, I felt like a Sonic the Hedgehog movie coming this late in the game, especially smurfsing it the way that it did, with real people and live action. I know they ended up course correcting high CP and, changing that. It's like, okay, well, you're on one course, and then you can detour if you've been only on one course for one film. I disagree with his sentiment on that regard. I love you, man. But, it's really, it's in the later years where they were the cool, edgy, and, opposition to Nintendo with actually having the blood in Mortal Kombat and, just insanity of some of their marketing campaigns and stuff like that. I was always enamored with Sega in those days, even if there were probably a lot of Nintendo games I preferred, Super Nintendo games that I preferred more so. I mean, if we're talking Link to the Past, if we're talking all of this stuff, and we're obviously not talking movies, so I will speed it along here, but finally getting a Sonic the Hedgehog film, especially after that Dangerous Minds song, which I love. That was the first, cassette that I ever bought was the Dangerous Minds soundtrack. I put the Target sticker over the parental advisory so my mom would be willing to, buy it with my allowance money, man. But I thought that was a weird choice. And you know what, I guess I will, as rapido this as I often do, I will still bueno, malo, and feo this here on Enfuegotainment. So, good, bad, and ugly, get to it like that. I thought it was a terrible idea to make a Sonic movie in this regard, and yet it was so much more bueno than I was anticipating. I think the going in with lessened expectations really helped the scenario, but I did, you know, I didn't mind James Marsden in different things I've seen him in. I mean, I always think of, I think Disturbing Behavior was one that I really dug when I was younger, and probably had something to do with Katie Holmes as well, but Nick Stahl, who's good in it too. But nonetheless, man, I mean, he actually has terrific just chemistry with our voice actor who does Sonic and who makes him, he's not edgy in any regard, but he is fun-loving, and there is a legitimate happiness and whimsy, but also just, I mean, he seems like a junior hire that, you know, I don't know, like a younger cousin or something that you would be totally cool, like, you know, hey, they're in town and they're visiting. Let's take you under my wing. Let's play some video games. Let's, you know, eat a bunch of junk food and like bond a little bit and have fun talking about all of our favorite, you know, comics and films and different things like that. That's kind of the vibe that Sonic gives you, because there is an essence of immaturity to him, because they make him an alien in this, which some may find a MALO, and, you know, I'll get to that at some particular point. But yeah, this movie had way more charm than I was anticipating. It's very cute. It's very PG in that regard. Not even PG-13. I'm trying to remember if the weird Mario Brothers movie with Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins was PG-13. I don't think it was. I think it was just regular PG. But that was just a steam cyberpunk weird nightmare. I felt like I was watching Hoskins in Brazil or something, a few different instances, and yet I actually, I will defend the strangeness of that movie. But this is a much more enjoyable film, and that's why it won the box office for a second time this past weekend, because it's fun, and if you go in with just a moderate level of expectation, and you dig Sonic, and the dialogue is far better than I was anticipating. It's far smarter. It's not like derp-de-dirt dumb like I was worried it would be. There's some really quality, like just jokes and little quips and stuff like that. And certain setups. It's not Shakespearean theater. You can't go in expecting that, obviously. You know what you're kind of getting yourself into here. And if you approach with said limited expectation, you will really have an enjoyable time with this. Most notably with Jim Carrey going full 90s Jim Carrey. Everybody has said it, but I have to double down on it. He is like mustache twiddling. I mean, he almost feels like he's like a Rocky and Bullwinkle villain in the way that he portrays it in this, and yet he does it so damn well. Those films of Jason Alexander, and I can't remember who the female counterpart was, but those were so bad in comparison with this Sonic movie, and that utilized the same approach and aesthetic of having digitized animated versions of these beloved animated characters, you know, starring along with live action human counterparts as villains and, you know, other corresponding characters and stuff. And Robotnik is great. I mean, just his demeaningness with his assistant. He's got one little montagey type bit where he's dancing around to this song about being evil in his little portable laboratory, which is terrific. And I mean, another instance where his assistant approaches and it's just like, I have Australian goat's milk lattes for you. And he's like, yes, I will take one because I love the way you make them. And it's just, it's pricelessly funny, man. I really, beyond any essence of expectation, and that in turn obviously gives you expectation for this. But, you know, once again, I mean, you gotta remember, this is a kid's movie, and it is a kid's movie through and through. And for some of the bad, some may, especially if you're Sega purist, dislike some of the streamlined storytelling. You may also dislike certain plot-holy facts, like Pitch meeting her, the fact that, okay, a speedster, you know, needs to go on a road trip when he can run to the Pacific Ocean and back in a matter of seconds. He needs somebody to be his guide, a real human person. And yes, it is at times by the numbers as far as like the actual storytelling goes, the villainousness, but there is nuance, and it really just boils more so from any little bit of MALO back to the charm of the dialogue and just the interactions with the character. Yes, there are a lot of cliched, tropey bits of it. We're going to go to the cowboy bar. We're going to I'm going to make a bucket list, and let's try to do everything before I go back to my home world. And some might also dislike exceedingly some of the addition of mythology and making him that alien and the transport, and, you know, I mean, going through worlds aspect with the rings, I thought that actually worked quite well. But there's like an owl that raised him and stuff, and lots of reviewers have probably talked about it. It's out of place. It's not video game specific, if I'm not mistaken. So that's there too. They do some of their own alterations, as often happens with video game films, but this was much more faithful to the tone of the character than anything, at least in my estimation, compared to the other biggie being like, you know, the Mario Brothers film. Because back in the day it was Sega versus Nintendo, and it was Mario versus Sonic. And I don't know, that Mario Brothers movie is as weird as they come. Check it out if you get the opportunity, because, my God. Anyway, if I'm going to do Feo, and I'm going to wrap the rest of this little Rapido review up. I know I don't typically do good, bad, and ugly on a Rapido, but, you know, Sonic has to be as Rapido as possible. The ugliness is most definitely in the cheese factor in certain scenes, and the essence of just illogicality, if that's even a word. Probably not, unfortunately. But, you know, really more so than anything, you know the ugly I'm going for. It makes the most sense. It's the complete redesign of the character that we had from, you know, they tried to make Sonic look more like almost kind of human-esque. Didn't work for a lot of people. The clamoring, the cries of the fans, you know, when that first trailer with the aforementioned Gangster's Paradise on there, which, you know, I prefer Amish Paradise, but, you know, Gangster's Paradise is good too. They're both fantastic songs, and great parodies are often parodying great songs in their own right, or at least ones that are very much seeped into the public subconscious. I don't know why the choice for that was in the initial marketing campaign. It felt to me more so like it was Jim Carrey's Robotnik influenced and associative in comparison with Sonic, or even the tone of the film. But the tone in some of the scenes kind of makes sense for the weird just juxtaposition of using that song. But yeah, it was ugly that they pushed the release date many months for this film to do a complete redesign of Sonic compared to what we saw in the initial trailer, after the fan outcry, after the clamoring, after the critiquing, and, you know, just whining in a lot of ways. I'm not going to necessarily say I think it's for the better, and some will probably find that to be ugly. I didn't hate the previous design as much as a lot of people. It looked more real-worldy in comparison with the very, very cartoony new look, which, while being more video game-centric and appropriate, I don't know how well it lent itself to a live-action setting, but, you know, who the hell am I to critique? I don't really watch a lot of these films that have both, you know, live-action actors with animated characters and all of the interaction. It must be just so fun for, you know, these real people trying to, you know, they've got like the little floating stick bobbly whateverness that they're supposed to be going back and forth with, and, you know, pause just long enough to allow them to deliver their dialogue, and then just go back with yours and try to have some sort of like physicality. It's a weird, ugly situation. So I will just leave that in the desired approach at that. But really, I had fun with this movie, and dare I say, it's cute, you know, and it's not super profane, or it's very family friendly, but with enough smart dialogue and humor to amuse and appease certain adults, depending on how willing you are to actually sit through something like this with your younger child. But yeah, it was also ugly at the fact that I went to a matinee showing that, you know, was in the afternoon, and I'm guessing, oh man, did we have a lot of kids that were brought by their parents after school, and there's a little too much talking, crying, interaction, and stuff like that. But what are you going to expect, you know, when you go see a film like this at that particular time, and it's just, you know, still riding strong in its box office. So if I was going to certify this as something in particular, no, it's not certified Fuego. It's not a 4-star. But yeah, it is a very solid 3. Like, if I did half Fuego fireballs, it would be a 3.5. But bottom line, this is bueno. This is 3 out of 5 in that regard. Bam, bam. Yes, that's right. And I quite enjoyed this film a lot more so than I was expecting to. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe here. It is greatly appreciated. The Star Wars coverage was plentiful over the course of the last year, and it is about to just gear back up with the recent release of Season 7 of Star Wars The Clone Wars on Disney+. That first episode is already available. I have yet to watch it because, as I said at the beginning of this review, I have been knee-deep in trying to just get through the last few seasons of the show. It's like 120-something episodes. I'm almost done with 5. I'm doing a retrospective episode that's going to talk about some of my personal favorite episodes, so that's what you can look forward to before I start reviewing each episode week by week individually, just like I did with The Mandalorian. So that is a thing that is happening. Also, recent review of The Gentleman is one that I really quite enjoyed this past year, but you've probably seen me more so than anything on youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. That's right, and most recently we did our review of The Lodge, which was a festival darling that mainstream audiences might be put aback by and very turned off with its slow burn and very just cold and heartless kind of approach to storytelling in a lot of ways, but I thought it was terrific, and you can see that review right now. And on The Horror Show, we do at least 1, sometimes 2 episodes a day in certain circumstances. And then lastly, every Monday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. There it is. We take part in a program called Show Business. Myself, Lindsay Mimsy from My 2 Cents of Nonsense, and lastly, Chauncey Robinson, who is a Rotten Tomatoes certified critic who deals with both political coverage in her journalistic career and then also has her own YouTube channel where she discusses horror and various other bits of stuff. But founder of The Feast, CP, on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel. That's where you can see that every Monday live. That's right, en vivo. So, I'm En Fuego. Y'all have been rad status. Awesome as always. And until the real of Cough comes around once more, hasta luego, cinemigos, and constant viewers and readers alike. But I am certainly hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, peace out. And yeah, thanks some time to go watch Sonic. It's actually quite the enjoyable excursion.